Hello out there. We're on the air. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Let me get my shit together here a little bit. There we go. Okay. Good morning. Welcome back to another day of the daily Bitcoin journey. Actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. We got a couple Bitcoiners in the chat, in the house. Letha, good morning. Johnny, good morning. Good to see you too. We got a good show today. We got a very surprising show, I think. I mean, I like looking into this kind of stuff because even somebody like myself who spends all my time in Bitcoin, I still wasn't really aware of what I'm about to talk about today. So this one's kind of dedicated to anybody out there who has been hearing about Bitcoin, thinking about Bitcoin, buying their Bitcoin for the first time. Make sure to send them this episode. Because myself personally, I've talked to some people in the last couple of days who have said, I want to buy some Bitcoin. Should I wait for it to come down a little bit? Everybody's kind of always worried whenever we get to an all-time high that that's where it's going to stay. So they're wondering if they should hold out for a little while longer and wait for it to dip a little bit. So I'm going to go through a spreadsheet today that I put together. And I think it's going to be pretty eye-opening to people. So with that in mind, it is Tuesday. Rock and roll's in the house. This looks like a big one. Good morning. Gold is stuck in the ground. Bitcoin is stuck in time. If gold goes up, they will mine more. If Bitcoin goes up, the same amount is mined. Bitcoin wins all the supply demand metrics, maulers. Jack's been hot. I would recommend highly, if you got some extra time, if you want to further your Bitcoin knowledge, check out Jack Mahler's channel. I think it's called the Money Matters Show. He's been doing it every week, every Monday. And his dad's been on there for the last 3 or 4 episodes. So some very good insights. He was a big player in the Chicago commodities market, futures market, whatever it was. He was a big deal in the market. So he has a very good understanding of markets, commodities, and what's happening in Bitcoin right now. So that's a great quote from Rock and Roll. Thanks for sharing that. I think the main thing there is that Bitcoin is going to win. Bitcoin is going to overtake gold eventually here. And not my opinion. You can look at any chart you want to, any graphic that shows all of the gold ETF money, all the capital flowing out of there and into the Bitcoin ETF. Pretty good visual. And I think it's a pretty good indication of kind of what we're going to be looking at for the next couple of years, decades. This thing's not slowing down. It's going to take over gold, and then it's going to slowly start eating everything. So with that, machine's running a little bit hot today. Hopefully everything's okay. Can everybody hear me and see me okay? I don't know what's going on here. Anyways, let's have a sip of coffee first. Make sure everything's running smoothly. Okay, metrics. Today we are at block height 834,360. If you're transacting on the Bitcoin Layer 1 network this morning, you're paying about 15 sats per rebyte. Very reasonable. Very reasonable. The last block was mined by Antpool. They got a total of 6.444 Bitcoin in about just over a month from now. That's going to be cut to about 3 Bitcoin every 10 minutes. Massive deal. Everybody's talking about it, I know, but I still think that everybody's underestimating just how big of a deal that's going to be. So this is a little bit outdated. It was 29 sats when I woke up this morning. It's down to 15, but the price, $72,000 US for 1 Bitcoin. Last year at this time, March 12th, 2023, you could have purchased 1 Bitcoin for $21,873 US dollars. And 4 years ago, look at this one, 4,800 US dollars for one Bitcoin 4 years ago today. And if we look at yesterday's, it was 8,000. So it pretty much cut in half this time last year. As we were getting ready for the halving in 2020, it dropped in half. So maybe it's going to drop in half again today. Could you imagine? Moscow time today, one US dollar will get you 1,389 Satoshis. The price today in Canada, we got $96,000, just about $97,000 for one Bitcoin here in Canada. Insane. And once that gets to 100,000, our moose jaw time here is going to be 1,000 sats for $1. That'd be a pretty easy metric, I think, to follow for Canadians. Eventually, Moscow time will get there as well. But the moose jaw time today, which is the equivalent to Moscow time, one monopoly dollar here in Canada will get you 1031,000 sats. So that is the metrics for today. Let's talk about this is going to be a pretty action-packed show, I think, for us. I'm excited for this one. Got a couple news things to touch on. Then we're going to get to the main part of the show here. So first of all, big shout out to Van Eck. They're one of the ETF issuers in the US. They announced yesterday that they're going to be dropping their fees on their ETFs to zero management fees from now until March 31st of next year. March 31st, 2025. I'm sure there'll be a very competitive rate at that time. But for now, for the next year, you're going to pay zero management fees if you're choosing the Van Eck. I think that's a genius move. I don't think that there's anybody else doing that. I think that Grayscale is way above market for their management fee. And you're seeing all the outflows from Grayscale into the other ETFs. And I think hopefully, if you're somebody who has, say, $1 million worth of Bitcoin, and if you have Van Eck or you have BlackRock charging 1 or 1.5%, whatever it is, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And so I think that Van Eck is actually going to get a whole bunch of new customers for this reason. And I think that even if they raise their fees next year to be competitive, they're already going to have those customers. And not only are they going to have those customers, but they're going to have good customers who are here right now. That's what you want. You want the OG Bitcoiners who have been there for a while, understand it, and those are the customers that you want. So I think that that's a brilliant move by Van Eck. I wanted to give them a shout out because we do have lots of Americans, I think, that watch this show. So if you're an American who doesn't self-custody your Bitcoin, I do see the need for ETFs. I have some ETFs myself just because it does make more sense for like pensions, retirement funds. If you go to work every day and you pay into your pension, you can choose to allocate some of that to Bitcoin quite easily now. So I want to give a shout out to Van Eck, not a sponsor, just I think it's a pretty good move by them. Second thing here, I don't know if anybody follows Drake on Instagram. Champagne Poppy, I think his name is on there. But he had a clip yesterday. Let me see how many followers he has. He posted a clip on his Instagram of Michael Saylor in his story. 146 million followers Drake has. And he shared a clip of Michael Saylor talking about Bitcoin yesterday. That's a big deal. Bitcoin's never had a marketing team. There's no CEO. There's no board of directors. There's no company behind Bitcoin. But there's things like this where Drake posts to his 150 million followers a clip of Michael Saylor talking about Bitcoin for free. That's a marketing for Bitcoin for free. And, there's probably not too many 40, 50, 60-year-olds watching Drake on Instagram, but there's a ton of, what would you call them? Millennials? I think I'm a millennial. I'm at the end of the millennial scale. Gen Z? I don't know. Anyways, ton of them So who do you think is going to be coming into the investment world in the coming years? Do you think that somebody who's 20 years old right now is going to decide that they're going to buy some US government bonds? Do you think that they're going to have enough capital or enough money to be able to buy real estate and invest in that? No, kids nowadays, 15, 20, 25-year-olds, they're going to be buying Bitcoin and they're going to be learning about Bitcoin. And that's the only money that they're ever going to know, especially the younger ones in that. So it's good to see Drake, pretty big influence in the world, especially on that generation, talking about Bitcoin. It's a big deal. Drake, market pump, not priced in yet. Vanguard down hard. Are they? Like in terms of their ETF holdings? I do have a chart here, but I didn't really look too far into who owns what. I did see that Fidelity and BlackRock are kind of the two kings of the space right now. So good to see. Justine, good morning. Got off my hospital shift just in time for the live. Good morning. Working nights. Good way to put yourself to sleep this morning after a night shift. No, this is a good one. This might keep you up all night. The second or third, I guess, thing I wanted to talk about was Trump. So yesterday we were talking about Trump. Letha gave us some good info on what Trump was talking about Bitcoin. And I think the main takeaway for me yesterday is that he is finally embracing Bitcoin in a roundabout way. I mean, he's not going too crazy with it, but he's still basically given his Trump stamp of approval to it. And that is a big deal. Trump is probably the most influential person on earth. And I think that having somebody like Trump, and the big thing for me with the whole Trump talking about this, he called it the new currency. Trump likes to throw a lot of hidden meanings into things. And Trump said that Bitcoin it is or could be one of the two, the new currency. So think about that for a second. Just think about 2024. We have an election year coming up. I think anybody with half an ounce of common sense and logic is thinking that Trump is going to be the president in November 2024. So just imagine that. Imagine a president in the United States that's Bitcoin friendly. So for 4 years, we're not going to have to worry about the miners being shut down. We're not going to have to worry about the US banning the on-ramps into Bitcoin. That's a huge deal because these next 4 years, as these institutions keep coming into it, as a whole new flock of Bitcoiners come in this year, if we can have somebody in office for at least 4 years and see the growth in Bitcoin during that time, that's a very big deal. Because once you get to that point, there is a point of no return. I think we've already kind of passed it in Bitcoin, honestly, but this is just kind of an added layer of protection there, I think. So if we got 4 years of Trump, a president who's friendly to Bitcoin, that's going to have significant impacts into the future. It seems like it's almost the perfect timing for that right now. So I think it's a much bigger deal than people think. Even though I wouldn't buy or sell based on what Trump says, I would feel a lot better about it if he's the president and he's friendly to it. Agree with this one. Rock and Roll says Trump on our team is the biggest salesman worldwide. Agree with that. Arnie's buzzing in the background somewhere here. So Rick Costa is late. He says, good morning. And did you smash the like yet? It's a good question. Have you? So that is, that's the happenings today. We got a little bit of chaos happening in the background right now, but that's okay. What do we got next here? ETF chart. So let's pull this up. I want to pull up two charts here. Where are we? Okay, so this is a picture of the, let me zoom in on this. This is a picture of the ETFs right now. So this is a tweet from Thomas at Hey Apollo. And it says, we're watching the 9 new ETFs buy 10K Bitcoin every day. This is a textbook example of demand shock and an inelastic supply curve. The price must rise. So you can see, I'm going to zoom in because I don't know how well you can see it on here, but that's what he said about it. Can I move down? Yeah, there we go. So this is the ETFs chart for the last, 2 months? So you can see the very start of it there. That's January when the ETFs were approved, January the 10th. And you can see what's happened here over the last 2 months. And I would say that this is a pretty good indication. That's a pretty steady line, pretty much buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. That's kind of what that looks like to me, because there's no huge up or downs. That's pretty much these ETFs buying every single Bitcoin that they can get their hands on right now. So they went from 0 in January to 400,000 Bitcoin in 2 months on a very steady incline here. So keep this in mind when we're talking about the main part of the show today. Keep this in mind. We've seen a steady flow 2 months straight, slowly accumulating more and more. And I don't have a crystal ball myself, but I would guess that this will probably continue until April, because in April, the new supply of Bitcoin gets cut in half. So we might see a rise all the way up till April and then a drop just because there's not enough supply to meet that demand. And I think that over time that'll continue going up and up and up. So that's the chart I wanted to show in terms of the ETFs, and it ties really well into what we're talking about today. So before we do that though, before we get into the main part of the show, talking about timing the markets, I did want to give a quick little ad here. I've been doing them. I was doing them every show for a while, but I think that's a little bit much. So this is the bitcoinjourney.ca. It has something for every single Bitcoiner in here. So there's the Bitcoin Journey. It's a 21-day course. That's basically for beginners. So I think that most people watching the show are kind of past that point, maybe, but you probably have people in your life who aren't there yet. So if you have friends, family, anybody who's just looking to get into Bitcoin, send them to bitcoinjourney.ca. And the course is on there. The YouTube channel is on there. The membership is on there. And then for Bitcoiners, there's I do have a membership on the site. And I think it's going to be very good for people who are putting a lot of money into Bitcoin. I usually talk about only investing as much as you know into Bitcoin, but I know that there's going to be a small percentage of people who don't take that advice. And they hear about Bitcoin, they see what it's been doing, the price wise, they get into it, and then they're like, okay, what do I do now? So I do have, I call it like the VIP, the very informed persons level. It's called the Orange Seal, but you can sign up for it, and every month or every quarter we get a check-in. And it's basically like you put in a bunch of money and you kind of need to know what to do after that. So you have your initial buy, and then we spend a couple years making sure that you have everything set up with your security, with your plan for spending it down the road, with your inheritance. Basically, somebody who has zero knowledge of Bitcoin but wants to invest a ton of money into Bitcoin, that's what this tier is for. It's obviously a little bit money because it's a lot more hands-on, but it is something to think about. If you're somebody who watches this show and you're going to be putting a significant amount into Bitcoin, and you basically just want somebody there to advise you, hold your hand through everything, that's what you want to check out. So I wanted to give a shout out to that this morning because that's what we're here for. So good morning, Litecoin Only is back in the house. Good to see you. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about timing the Bitcoin market. Because as I said at the start of the show here, I've had a couple friends, a couple people in my network reach out in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, all-time high. There's going to be more and more texts coming in from people. But their main question is, should I buy it now or should I wait to see if it comes down a little bit? And after watching this, after seeing the visual here, after seeing the spreadsheet, I think they're going to have their answer. So let's get to this. As I said, this was very surprising to me. I didn't think that it moved this fast. Oh, it's really foggy out today. Very foggy. I didn't think that it moved this fast. So let's take a look at this first. And we talked about this on the show last week. This is a tweet from Dylan LeClaire. It says the time it took Bitcoin to double after its previous break of all-time high. In December 2020, the last time it happened, it took 18 days to double. March 2017, it took 84 days. November 2013, 10 days. And March 2013, 18 days. So that happened already. That happened last week. And now we're kind of at a countdown to see what's going to happen next here. So keep this in mind. Keep that last chart that I showed in mind. And let's proceed. Daniel, good morning, my friend. So as we do, this is another spreadsheet of ours. Our favorite thing here. My favorite thing. I don't know if people like it or not, but I think it's easy to see. The one problem I have with a lot of Bitcoin shows is that they've been into Bitcoin for a very long time, a couple cycles. And so they show all these different graphs and they talk about them briefly, but then they just say different things and they just talk about it. And they kind of expect that everybody listening to the show understands and can kind of comprehend exactly what they're talking about there. So the idea with these spreadsheets is to kind of take that information and dive into it a little bit further. So let's talk about this. This is kind of the idea that I want to walk through here. And this is an investment of $10,000. And I do realize that a lot of people don't have $10,000, but that I felt like that was a good number to use. So I'm comparing this to the last Bitcoin cycle that we went through, the last time that we were going through the halving cycle back in 2020. So as I said, in March 2020, the price of Bitcoin was $4,805. So with a $10,000 investment, you could have had 2.08 Bitcoin, worth today $150,000. So kind of what this graphic is going to demonstrate, or this spreadsheet is going to demonstrate, is that if you wait and wait and wait to try to time it, all you're going to do is miss out on sats. So this is the total Bitcoin that you would, I probably should have put this in here. Let's put Bitcoin. This is the price, and this is today. So we're going to go through this, obviously not line by line. We don't need to, but then in June, it jumped back up to $9,000 for one Bitcoin. That was after the halving, right? So at that time, for $10,000, you could have got one full Bitcoin. Today worth just about $80,000. If you held on a little bit longer, you kept procrastinating, you would have paid $13,000, ended up with 0.73 of a Bitcoin or 73 million sats. And today that would be $52,000. All pretty good. And that's why I highlighted these top three, because that's kind of it's not one day, it's not 1 week or even 1 month. If you would have bought Bitcoin during any of these, what is that? 6-7 months, you would be doing very well. That would have been the time to buy it. So then in January, the price jumped up to $29,000. In March, the price jumped up even more to $56,000. Then it dropped. This was when the China mining ban happened in May 2021. So it dropped to 35,000. And then in October that year, and obviously November 2021, that's when we saw the all-time high. So if you would have waited that long, obviously that's probably when most people bought, actually. They were waiting and they were waiting and waiting to try to buy cheap Bitcoin. And then they saw the price running up. And this is probably when most people bought. So they would have ended up with 0.6 of a Bitcoin or 16 million sats. And then you can see it drops off a little bit there, starts going down. So we peak here. This was November 2021. That's when we hit the last all-time high, $69,000. And then it started coming down. And I think FTX kind of happened in here somewhere. I should change that. This is when the bottom was. So a couple things here, a couple things to note. I think the most important part to take from this is that you need to be buying it as much Bitcoin as you can from today until October this year. That's kind of the thesis. And I don't think the smartest idea would be waiting to buy, waiting to time the market, because even let's look. What? I knew something was going to happen today. I could sense it. I think we're back. Maybe just let me know in the chat if we're back. Okay, we're back. Is this my first show? No, we're good now. We're good. Okay, so just let this soak in for a second here, I think. And the first thing that I would say is that if you are somebody or you know somebody who's waiting to buy Bitcoin right now. So let's talk this through. So March 2020, the price was $4,800. You could have had 2 Bitcoin. So if you kept waiting and waiting and waiting, you would have never gotten this amount of Bitcoin ever. So if you were procrastinating there in March of 2020, waiting for it to drop even further, you would have never gotten the same amount of Bitcoin again. And so even if you waited, let's say that you decided not to buy any for March, June, you wanted to keep waiting, you thought Bitcoin was going to drop even further. You kept waiting, you waited for 4 whole years. And then in November 2022, it dropped all the way down to 16. But imagine the psychology there, that you would have had to hold and wait through all that. And you're trying to pick the bottom of the market, and you're still going to be behind the 8 ball. So that's kind of the main thing here, is that even if you waited and waited and waited through all that time, and FTX happened, the China mining ban happened. Even if you waited to try to get the bottom again, instead of getting 2 Bitcoin, you ended up with 63 million sats, 0.6 of a Bitcoin at the very bottom of that after waiting. Even if you held out all the way till October 2020, you would have had 0.73 of a Bitcoin versus the very bottom of the market, 0.63. So moral of the story, without a doubt, is buy as much Bitcoin as you possibly can in these next 6 months. I would, and even look at the difference between March and October. If you would have bought $10,000 worth of Bitcoin back in March of 2020, you'd have 2 Bitcoin today. If you waited 6 months, October 2020, you'd have 0.7 of a Bitcoin, which is still pretty good, but not even close to the sweet spot here in terms of the all-time high and the halving. So even though that this is a pretty good indication, I think, of what's coming, we are in unprecedented territory right now, uncharted waters. And the reason that we're in uncharted waters is because this is the first time that Bitcoin hit an all-time high before the halving. So along with that, something to coincide is going to be the ETFs. So we've hit the all-time high before the halving. You look at this chart here. Where'd it go? You look at this chart here, and basically what this chart suggests to me is that we're never going to have a shortage of demand again. So people waiting for it to drop a little bit further, you're competing with all of these ETFs, and they're buying as much Bitcoin as they possibly can, and they don't give a shit what the price is. So that's who you're competing against. That's who you're waiting for the floor to fall out underneath, is against these ETFs. So just keep that in mind, that back in 2020, we did not have the ETFs. We did not have that kind of demand every single day, that amount of capital every single day coming into Bitcoin. The floor was much softer. I would say that we built a pretty nice fortress now in terms of our floor. And I think that, during these next 18 days after the all-time high, could it double? Could it triple? The price is kind of, I think that the price is pretty irrelevant at this point, because these ETFs, these are the main customers right now, and they're going to be buying Bitcoin at whatever price. They don't care what the price is. And I apologize once again. I probably sound like a broken record at some points here, but it's really important to drill this home, because these ETFs are not your average investor. They're not trying to buy it low and then sell it higher. They're buying at whatever price they can get their hands on Bitcoin for, and they're never selling it. So those are two totally different market dynamics, and it's a totally different paradigm shift in terms of what we're going into here with Bitcoin. So just let that kind of sink in a little bit. Most times with these investment companies, they're looking to buy low and sell it high. With these ETFs, with the Bitcoin ETFs and everything that's happening in Bitcoin right now, these ETFs are buying at any price, and they're never selling it. And the reason they're buying at any price is because they actually make their money off of the management fees. So the higher that the Bitcoin is valued, the higher the management fee they're going to be charging their clients on it. So they don't want Bitcoin to be $13,000 again. They want Bitcoin to be $13 million. Because think about the difference in fees there. They want this thing to go as high as possible. So with that in mind, we know what's coming. We know what's happened in the past. And we can set ourselves up as best we can right now, because we're never going to have this opportunity again. Look at this. Look at this spreadsheet one more time. This is where we are today. 4 years ago, at this time in the cycle, Bitcoin was $4,800. In 4 years from now, we're going to be looking back at the exact same thing. Who knows what Bitcoin is going to be priced at that time, but we're going to be looking back similar to 78,000 or 72,000 where we are today, looking back to when it was 4,800. So think about the difference there. And that was a much different dynamic as well. Like I said, with these ETFs, this is a whole new ball game that we're playing in here. So that's kind of what I wanted to get through today. I'll go through a few comments here. If anybody has any comments, questions, anything in here, and then we'll wrap things up. I did want to keep the show quick today, because I want you to send this to anybody in your life, whether that's your dad, your brother, any friends who are talking about waiting to buy Bitcoin. Show them this, because like I said, even for somebody like myself who spends every single day in Bitcoin, I didn't realize how much of a increase happened after the halving and kind of leading up to the halving, and then a year later, right? Everybody's going to be pumped if Bitcoin gets to 100,000 in the next couple months. But then think about what's going to happen in a year from now, and we're never going to be able to buy Bitcoin with $10,000. We're never going to get the same amount of Bitcoin as we'll get today. So pretty important. Crypto Heathen says we're at the very beginning of the bull, which I very much agree with. And this one is truly built different. We can all see the writing on the wall. There's the writing on the wall. You got 6 months. March is the best time to be doing it. Before the halving is going to be the best time to do it. But you're still not going to miss out, I don't think. If you wait a year or two from now, you're going to miss out on a lot of Bitcoin. And I think that's where the disconnect is, because people are still like, well, I have $10,000. I can just buy it in a year from now. I'm still going to have some Bitcoin, but you have to look at the difference in Bitcoin, how much you're going to get for that. That's why I wanted to use the $10,000 and show exactly how much Bitcoin you would have got for that, because everybody has such a recency effect with everything, investing, Bitcoin, and they don't look far back enough and actually do comparisons like that to see how much Bitcoin they would have had. Time in the market is better than timing the market. Two very good points there. Rock and Roll says, when just getting into Bitcoin, what helped me is staying solvent. The more you learn and the more your conviction grows, you'll eventually see that there is no second best asset. There's no second best crypto asset, as Saylor says, and there's no second best asset, period, as Rock and Roll says. And Rock and Roll also says, my problem is buying the top forever. I'm the same. And so once you get to that point, I think once you get your first initial buy, that's kind of why I used the $10,000, because I wanted to talk to people who are going to be putting in like a lump sum of money. That's kind of where you start right now. I think that would be my advice, is take a lump sum of your dollars, your fiat dollars, buy Bitcoin today. And then from there, continue learning, continue educating yourself, and continue doing the DCA route. Every month you buy more Bitcoin and see what happens with that. But this is kind of like your first lump sum purchase there. And if you are in Canada and you're looking to buy Bitcoin, make sure you're using Bull Bitcoin. They're not a sponsor of the show. They are just there is no second best Bitcoin exchange in Canada besides Bull Bitcoin. So there's a link in the description. Make sure to use that. You get like $25 worth of free Bitcoin, and you're going to be set up with the best exchange in Canada. You can do cash at the post office. You can do an e-transfer, very easy to do, or you can send a wire transfer, more secure for the larger amounts with Bull Bitcoin. Pomp in the house, he says, to be honest, people shouldn't feel like they're missing out. Bitcoin at $1,000 has the same properties with Bitcoin at $10,000. And if your timeline's long enough, I very much agree with that. Even this chart here, the difference between $9,000 Bitcoin and $47,000 Bitcoin is going to be a rounding error in 10 years from now. But you still might as well buy Bitcoin today, because the difference there is how much Bitcoin you're going to get. You're still going to get some Bitcoin, but your nest egg, your retirement fund, your generational wealth within your family, the sooner you buy it, the more you're going to have in 10 or 20 years from now, or in 100 years from now. So keep that in mind. Rock and Roll, have a great one. There is no second best morning show. I appreciate that, my friends. See you tomorrow. With that, a little bit of housekeeping here. Every Thursday we do a live Q&A. So if you're a new viewer to the show, if you're a new listener to the show, and if you have any questions or comments about anything we've talked about, I want you to send an email to 88sats@proton.me, and with your question, with your comment, and we'll talk about it on Thursday on the live show, the live Q&A. So it's everybody's favorite day, mine for sure. I love those shows, and I think it brings a lot of value to people, because for the most part, people don't have somebody that they can reach out to. I think that a lot of people within Bitcoin feel pretty isolated for the most part, because there's such a small amount of Bitcoiners out there that they feel kind of isolated. So having a community like our Living in the Future tier, the founders in there, I think that's going to be the best investment of people's lives is joining that the VIPs, $5 a month, and it's going to unlock a whole bunch of benefits in the future. Plus being part of a community. And if you are somebody who wants to take it very seriously, you pay a little bit more, but you get a constant check-in and just make sure that everything is going as planned. Having somebody there makes a huge difference when you have a lot of capital, a lot of skin in the game, and you don't really know what you're doing. So consider that. I appreciate everybody very much for being here. Make sure to press the like button if you want. If you got anything from this, if you've been getting any sort of value and you don't feel like signing up for the membership, there's a Lightning address in the description as well. You can send 100 sats, 1,000 sats, and if you attach a message to that, I'll read it on the show for you. So with that, I hope everybody has the best Tuesday of your entire life today. Personally, I hate Tuesdays, but today's going to be a good day. Sun shining, and we're in Bitcoin. We're already living in the future. I don't think there's ever been a better time in history to be alive than right now. So take advantage of it. It's not going to be here forever. Have yourselves a great day. I appreciate all of you very much for being here and joining in the live show. It makes things much more interesting and fun. So take it easy, and we'll see you right back here first thing tomorrow morning.